There is something reassuring about modern corporate gaming, because failure can arrive wearing a clean suit and carrying a polished presentation. Studios miss targets, projects vanish, player charts fall through the basement, and executives still find an arrow pointing upward. Every slide looks expensive, every phrase sounds confident, and every uncomfortable number has somehow gone on annual leave. Now we have Marathon, Bungie's $40 survival extraction shooter, standing beneath Sony's latest cloud of investor language. During its investor update, Sony said Season 2 helped the game maintain a high user retention rate while acquiring new users. Initially, that sounds encouraging until you notice what the statement does not contain. No total player count appears, no sales figure arrives, no revenue number emerges, and no retention percentage gets defined. Absent those figures, Sony praised Marathon's retention without revealing how many people it was actually retaining. Here lies the entire controversy, wrapped in enough corporate padding to survive re-entry. Importantly, Sony never literally said Marathon was performing well. Tech4Gamers used that phrase in its headline while interpreting Sony's narrower statement. Such a distinction matters because the real problem is not a fabricated quotation, but the missing scale inside the genuine one. Marathon launched on March 5, 2026, for Steam, PlayStation 5, and Xbox Series X and S. This is not a full gameplay review, because the issue here concerns Sony's public claim and the visible evidence around it. Neither is this some hobby project assembled by 4 people above a kebab shop. Bungie built a major live service release under Sony, with all the cost pressure and expectations that come with that arrangement. Therefore, when Sony says the audience is loyal but does not disclose its size, suspicion becomes understandable. Perhaps the game is stabilizing, maybe console activity is healthy. Possibly retention is genuinely strong. Still, Sony supplied the flattering adjective and kept the measurement. Today, that omission matters because live service games survive through scale, spending, and repeated attention, while vague language lets every side imagine the version of Marathon that best supports its preferred argument without seeing missing evidence. Before we go any further, perform the small ritual demanded by our automated landlords. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, and support the Patreon if you enjoy watching corporate statements receive basic medical attention. YouTube prefers obedient clicking, regular enthusiasm, and the occasional sacrifice of human dignity. Meanwhile, I prefer keeping the lights on and maintaining enough alcohol to survive investor presentations. Everyone gets something. Retention sounds technical, but the basic idea is simple. Usually, the term measures how many players return after a chosen period. Unfortunately, Sony never defined that period. Was it 1-day retention, 7-day retention, 30-day retention, paying users, Season 2 users, console users, or people who launched the game twice because the first attempt crashed? Without the starting audience, the time window, and the actual percentage, high retention is not a measurement. Basically, it is an adjective wearing a lab coat. Keeping 80% of 1 million players would be impressive. Holding 80% of 5,000 would give you a reasonably active supermarket. Season 2 launched on June 2nd with Night Marsh, the Sentinel Runner shell, new weapons, the Cradle upgrade system, progression changes, and other improvements. Alongside that update came a free play week across Steam, PlayStation 5, and Xbox. Players could enter without purchasing the game and carry their progress into the paid version afterward. Naturally, Sony gained new users. Giving away access and announcing that people accepted it is not a business miracle. Costco achieves the same result with cheese cubes every Saturday. How many free players bought Marathon? Which portion returned after the promotion ended? Where did spending increase? Who were genuinely new customers rather than former players checking whether Bungie had moved the furniture? Officially, Sony confirmed that the promotion attracted users but did not reveal how many converted into $40 customers. Consequently, the statement may be true while remaining impossible to evaluate from outside the company. Internally, Sony can see sales, active users, session length, return frequency, spending, and conversion across every supported platform. Publicly, everyone else receives the word high. A small audience can produce strong retention. Another weak month can even create impressive growth against an even weaker baseline. Moreover, Sony may be comparing Season 2 with Marathon's recent baseline instead of its launch performance. Steam gives us one narrow public window into this situation. PlayStation and Xbox players exist, and anyone pretending otherwise is doing accountancy with half a calculator. According to the dated Steam snapshot, the paid game reached an all-time peak of 88,337 concurrent players. Separately, the free server slam passed 143,000. Comparing that free test directly with the paid launch would exaggerate the decline and weaken the argument. Frankly, the real decline already looks uncomfortable enough without borrowing extra corpses from another funeral. At the time checked on August 1, 2026, a SteamDB showed fewer than 5,000 players online and a recent daily peak slightly above 6,000. Remember, concurrent players are not total players. Those figures show how many people were online at one moment, not everyone who played during the entire day or month. Regardless, the contrast matters. First came more than 143,000 during the free server slam. Second came 88,337 at the paid game peak. Later came more than 14,800 during the temporary Vault Breaker spike. Together, those figures separate free curiosity, paid interest, and short-term attention around a major update. Committed communities can keep games alive for years. However, Marathon still carries Bungie-sized costs and expectations. Free-to-play games can sometimes survive through a smaller group of heavy spenders. By contrast, Marathon charges $40 upfront, so Sony also needs a continuing flow of buyers rather than merely a loyal remnant. None of this means a smaller game cannot survive. Rather, it means Sony's chosen metric must show enough scale to support the service Marathon is supposed to become. Extraction shooters also depend on healthy matchmaking, varied skill levels, reasonable queue times, and enough newcomers to keep every lobby from becoming a veteran's private club. Population affects more than investor confidence. Directly, it changes the experience for the people who remain. Vault Breaker launched on July 21st and briefly pushed Steam concurrency above 14,800. Roughly, that tripled the previous daily level. Interest clearly existed, especially for a version of Bungie's world without hostile squads stealing everyone's work. Yet a spike is not a recovery. Metaphorically, Bungie opened the nightclub, packed the floor on opening night, and then watched the crowd thin before closing time. Crucially, Vault Breaker was still active when the Steam population returned toward its lower range. Earlier, Sony had described Marathon's reception and retention positively, while admitting Bungie's wider title portfolio had failed to meet earnings expectations. Afterward, the company recorded a 120.1 billion yen impairment against Bungie's assets. Nevertheless, that impairment concerned Bungie's broader business and must not be dumped entirely onto Marathon like an accounting piano. Destiny, forecasts, management decisions, development costs, and other assets all matter. Somewhere, the building lost value while the presentation kept praising the loyal customers in the lounge. Defenders of Sony have a reasonable argument. Since Marathon launched on 3 platforms, Steam may represent only a minority of the audience. Additionally, Sony can measure console activity, spending, session length, and behavior that public databases cannot see. Companies may also withhold platform figures because they consider them commercially sensitive or easy to misread. Fair enough. Nonetheless, silence does not transform an undefined metric into public evidence. For clarity, Sony could reveal active users, define 30-day retention, disclose free week conversion, report sales growth, or provide a platform split. Only enough context for public scrutiny to make the claim meaningful would be required. When a company announces good news but hides the measurement, skepticism is not toxicity. It is literacy. One sentence says high retention and new users. Coverage then translates that into Marathon is performing well. Soon, social media reduces the whole thing to Sony confirms Bungie has been saved. Nobody at Sony called Marathon a financial success, nor did the company reveal profit. Likewise, it never claimed the audience was enormous. Measured without cohort size, retention is theater. New users without conversion data are foot traffic. High without a number is what a teenager says when asked why the kitchen smells strange. Whatever you think of the extraction format, Bungie clearly invested in Marathon's presentation and distinctive visual identity. Bright colors, industrial spaces, and angular equipment give the game a recognizable look. Sadly, presentation does not answer the business question. Take Bungie's shooting, attach an extraction loop, build a seasonal treadmill, charge admission, add progression systems, and demand repeated attention. Modern audiences already have too many second jobs disguised as entertainment. Log in, complete challenges, learn the economy, finish the event before it disappears, consider the premium rewards pass, and return next week. Repeat that cycle until the servers close or your enthusiasm does. Why should Marathon replace the established games already consuming your time? Eventually, Sony's statement sounds less like a performance report and more like a hospital update drafted by lawyers. The patient demonstrates strong attachment to oxygen. Excellent, but how is the patient? Engagement with the ventilator remains high. Interesting, but how many organs function? We are acquiring new medical professionals. So, the answer is no answer. Ultimately, the central failure is not merely a declining Steam chart. Games fall, recover, stabilize, and sometimes build devoted communities after difficult launches. Effectively, this statement announces progress without publishing enough evidence for outsiders to test it. Accordingly, Bungie gets a comeback headline, outlets get a story, and investors receive reassurance. Audiences receive one adjective. Candidly, Sony could have said Marathon was rebuilding from a smaller base. Alternatively, it could have defined the metric or explained whether console performance offsets Steam weakness. Candid updates would not require every internal secret. Just enough context to show what improved would have been sufficient. What number would convince you that Marathon has recovered? Active users, copies sold, 30-day retention, or actual revenue? Fundamentally, the company has not proved Marathon is dead. Equally, it has not proved Marathon is thriving. In practice, it selected the nicest metric, concealed the measurement, and asked investors to applaud the adjective. Potentially, console numbers are enormous. Conceivably, 30-day retention is exceptional. Hypothetically, free players converted in droves. Fine, show us. Any victory speech without a scoreboard is karaoke for shareholders. Even now, Marathon may be retaining players. Predictably, Sony is retaining the numbers, the context, and apparently the keys to the evidence cupboard too. Thus ends the autopsy. Bring the head count before collecting the body.